Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be discussing the final round of the Superprestige which took place in Middelkerke. It was the Noordzee Cross and last year the Belgian Championships were here, but now we went back to the normal venue for the cross, and with me here to discuss that is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
The course had changed a little bit, actually pretty significantly if you look at it, because they had reversed many of the sections and some of the hills had been altered a bit, but nevertheless it still very much looked like the Middelkerke which we are used to seeing at the end of the Superprestige right now. There's also the oldest cross still existing in Belgium. The first edition was in 1959. So, without further ado, let's get into the racing. Enough facts. It was Lars van der Haar, the Dutch champion and leader in the Superprestige, who had the fastest start. For the first 15 minutes, he was furious. He was going at it from the front, launching cartouche after cartouche. That eventually led to a situation where only Laurens Sweeck and Iserbyt were together with him. Van der Haar was not at any point considering to let the pace drop, and every time somebody else took the lead, he was quick to take over. Unfortunately for him, once they had dropped Iserbyt, Sweeck had the lead in the sandpit, and we saw a rare bad passage of Sweeck through the sandpit. Van der Haar and Sweeck needed to get off their bikes, and Iserbyt was back in the race. Later on, even Joris Nieuwenhuis could come back as the pace did drop a bit at the front of the race. However, it was clear that Nieuwenhuis had to pay in cash for the efforts he had put in, as Van der Haar attacked again. Only Iserbyt was able to bridge that gap as Nieuwenhuis made a bad passage through the sandpit. Van der Haar had looked the strongest throughout the entire race, but in the final lap he ultimately had to bow down to Iserbyt because Van der Haar made a mistake. Up a steep bank he hit the top of the hill with his crank or maybe his pedal, he fell over, and that led to Iserbyt having a gap. Iserbyt didn't hesitate and claimed victory ahead of Van der Haar, who did win the overall Superprestige. Behind that, Sweeck had the upper hand over Nieuwenhuis, which meant that Sweeck ended third. The win by Iserbyt Issam, I can hardly say it is surprising to me, especially after the way this race unfolded. Van der Haar was very aggressive, spending a lot of energy, and it's then not the first time that Iserbyt comes to the front at the exact right moment. He seems to have like a nose for this, that he knows exactly when to go, when to be where. Because remember back to a race like Ruddervoorde or many other examples, you never have the feeling that he's really in it, but in the final lap, he takes it.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't give him half a chance because he will take it definitely. And, Van der Haar, like you said, beginning of the race definitely was the one that took a lot of initiative, which was in a way also understanding, because also in the race interview he said that he didn't want to have a lot of riders bunched together, because if you have a mechanical or any sort of issue, it could ruin your classification. Obviously he had a very stable lead, but everything is possible. So I think that in that way it was, in that sense it was understanding. But yeah, Iserbyt didn't look the strongest, but going into the last lap with Iserbyt, and especially if you're an equal to him, it's very dangerous. And Van der Haar made a crucial mistake, and then from there, it was for Iserbyt basically making sure that he went through the sand passes well, which he did. I think the best sand passes for him almost. And Van der Haar, who went well through the sand, was not able to do it again. And before that, it was already kind of done and dusted for Van der Haar, the chances to win today. But I think, regardless of his second place today, I think that Van der Haar was definitely the stronger rider, looked very good. But Iserbyt also a very deserved winner today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not really luck that he wins here. Van der Haar made a mistake himself, and that cost him the win. I don't think that final sand passage still affected the result. I mean, sure, Van der Haar needed to grab onto the poles at the side to pull him through, but the gap was already pretty significant. I think once Iserbyt accelerated after the crash, the gap was 5 seconds, and Van der Haar knew it. Well, it's not for today. Tomorrow there's another day in the X2O trophy. I've won the overall, so I can be happy with that. And it is a shame for him. I think he's getting into a bit of better form again. Of course, he had that tough period in the Christmas period, illness, then that absolute mud fest at the Dutch Nationals, which completely, well, drained him. And then, yeah, it looks to be a bit better. I mean, last week at Worlds, we already saw that in the beginning. He helped launch Van der Poel, paid a price for that, eventually came back into the race. Ultimately lost because he couldn't hop the barriers, and I thought that was interesting today, because for most part of the race he was hopping the barriers, and Sweeck wasn't. Sweeck was running. I think Sweeck was also running last week. We know Sweeck isn't too comfortable either, but it's something that's maybe been a bit under the radar, or not really gotten the spotlight. Like, everybody's like, oh yeah, Van der Haar should be jumping, it cost him too much. But if you look at it over the season, I think Sweeck is also not too comfortable and has been running plenty of times. And today we could even see the difference that Van der Haar was jumping relatively smooth, while Sweeck was running almost all of the laps. I mean, Van der Haar only didn't jump in the laps that the pace was super low.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, Sweeck definitely is also one of those riders that, for some reason, does not really jump the barriers that often. And Van der Haar has a, sometimes it goes very well, I think, in training, and then he has some confidence to jump over those barriers, and then something happens, and then it snaps, and then he just, runs over them. Today, jumped over them, I think, almost every lap, and I think that's, in this race it was, I wouldn't say crucial, but it was definitely something where you could save a little bit of energy. And if you have a gap, and you do not jump the barriers, then that gap will grow. And on a course like this, it's hard to create a gap, but when you have a gap, it's also easy in a way to maintain it. It's relatively easy to maintain it because of the obstacles, because it's not a race where you basically can have a lot of long straights and use your power. You have a lot of sections that turn around, and technical as well, where you cannot really make a lot of difference between the riders. And I think that, with the barriers, that definitely with Sweeck today started well, but then, later on in the race kind of struggled a little bit, and then it's, he had to settle for third.
The course definitely didn't play into the hands of an attacker. I mean, Sweeck tried a bit in the beginning, but especially Van der Haar tried many times to drop the rest. It just doesn't work here with the steep hills, the long straights. You're always within sight, and a fast course, it's just not easy to get rid of the rest, and that's ultimately what cost Van der Haar. It was a bit more technical, a bit more corners, a bit earlier and easier that you're out of sight, so that could have helped, but it is what it is. You need to race the course that is there, and for Sweeck, it just wasn't his day. And last week at the Worlds, he had a snapped chain at some point, fell back due to that, was in the running for a medal still before. But I do feel that for Sweeck, this season it's been enough. Like, he focused on the World Cup, did all 14 World Cup rounds, tried the Superprestige, ultimately faded in that, tried to peak for the Belgian Championships, was good there, ultimately missed out due to that incident with Vanthourenhout. Now, it wasn't bad, but I think the sand was telling. Normally it's his terrain, and now it's just been enough. He's paying the price for a long season, and that's always the weird dynamic after Worlds. The performances become super inconsistent, and the other example of that is Michael Vanthourenhout, another rider who had been consistent throughout the season, then 9th today. Also for him, he's an okay sand rider, but even he was like all over the place in that sand pit. I mean, not as drastically as Sweeck, who is normally the sand specialist, but you can just see the season is coming to an end. The morale is becoming a bit lower, especially if there's nothing on the line anymore, and it just all adds up.
It's almost like the end of a school year where you're waiting for the summer break, and then that last week you're not really doing anything. You have to attend, but other than that, it's basically kind of over. And with the riders now after the Worlds, a lot of riders are taking a little bit of rest, not training. Some are training, some still feel very good, and it's just, I think it's also mentally, it's kind of a switch in the mind of the riders that they also feel this kind of the end of a season, and some are already in that switch of season ending, and do not really have something to gain from the classification in a way as well. So all these things add up, and you should definitely not draw your conclusions at the end of the season with those races. I mean, the season is for a big part played. There are still some stakes in terms of classification, some points and some places that you can gain, and some prize money, obviously. But other than that, it's the big races have been done, and it's now for the enthusiasts as us that can enjoy some cyclocross till the end of the season.
Yeah, it really is the end of the school year, because you have the people who've been good all season. They just need to consolidate their classifications. Then you have the people who already have the luxurious position of having a great season. Vanthourenhout has 2 titles. Sweeck has won the World Cup. So they don't need to try anymore. The last tests for them, they've already passed the season. And then you have some people who are still motivated to either show their potential or to save their season and graduate to the next year. Because if we look at the entire top 10, we had that win of Iserbyt ahead of Haar and Sweeck. Then Nieuwenhuis, who tried what he could but paid the price for needing to chase the first part of the race. Very strong performance by Gerben Kuipers in 5th once again. Kuhn also strong in 6th. Then Verstringen in 7th ahead of Van de Putten, Vanthourenhout and Orts. Out of this, not really people who need to save their season, but I will once again say very good performance by Gerben Kuipers. The progression he has made is very special. Let's not go into too much detail on him, because we already thoroughly discussed him in our Worlds podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go check it out. It's almost our most listened podcast ever, so go listen to it. Kuhn also strong in 6th, but I think the most interesting one to still mention here is, I guess, Emil Verstringen, 7th. How would you reflect upon the season of Verstringen? Of course, that under-23 European title, but also some very rough races, and especially between the elites, it hasn't always been exactly perfect for him.
Yeah, I think a season with some ups, but definitely also some downs. It was on an age as well where you can expect such a season. He's only 21. He's definitely someone that has a lot of talent, but for me, I think in the summer there were some expectations laid up him with some of his road results, and I think that was not really fair, but you cannot do a lot about it. I think for him in terms of this season, it was definitely not terrible, but I think that he himself maybe expected also a little bit more from it. In the end, I think that European title is definitely a big bonus, a big plus, and it's something that he needs to cherish. And I think next season for him, he's probably going to do, I think, another year of under 23 before stepping up to the elite. So I think there are some goals for him next season.
Yeah, as you say, the consistency hasn't really been there, but you can't really expect that either. I mean, other under-23 riders that raced today, or first-year elite actually, Mees Hendricks and Ryan Kamp, they have also had a lot of ups and downs this season. And the expectations for Verstringen were probably too high, because that road race, it was not really a high-profile road race where he did well, and I feel like he's back in the shadow of Thibaut Nys. Like, he's been in that for a while, and last season he stepped out of it, and that really raised expectations, because Nys had a disappointing season. He stepped in, and people were like, well, if you can make another step, you're going to be a serious contender for top 5s. That step hasn't been made this winter, but there's still at least 2 or 3 more winters for that to be made. Then on to the women's race. Yeah, that really was not the most interesting one, as Leonie Benveld had the best start, but in the first lap it was quickly Sein del Carmen Alvarado, leader of the Superprestige, to take over. She opened the gap over the rest. Lucinda Brand stayed close for a while, but started making way too many mistakes, not only in the sand but also on hills, and she dropped back to 4th, was even behind the 777 duo of Van der Heijden and Worst. But far behind the back of Alvarado, Brand managed to repack herself past the 777 duo and drop them, so she ended 2nd. Behind that, Worst did a lot of work for Van der Heijden, who wanted to be sure that she stayed away from Betsema for the 3rd place in the Superprestige. That happened. Van der Heijden then rewarded Vorst with the podium spot, although I think it's a fair conclusion to make that Vorst was the strongest out of that 777 duo. So that makes the podium Alvarado, Brandt and Vorst. I don't really have too much to say about the win of Alvarado, except that she really is the deserved winner of the Superprestige here, Issam. If you win, I think 5 out of the 8 races from the top of my head, you've done a very good job and certainly deserve that.
Yeah, I think it was 5 out of 8, and yeah, I think in this Superprestige this season, Alvarado and the big 3 were not there. I think she was definitely always one of the main favorites, and she also made sure that she was in a very good position to bring a victory home, and definitely 100% deserved winner of the overall classification, 25,000 euros richer. But I think, this season for Alvarado has been, I would say, a positive season. It's she struggled definitely last season, but this season has been a little better. I think that she can also look back on a very, very strong season, and then it's for her, the question, is she going to be able to bridge that gap to Van Empel, to Peterson, to Van Anrooij? That is for her, I think, the next step for next season, and but I think that overall she can be very happy with the season, how it played out.
That is going to be the big question over the summer. Are Alvarado, Brandt, maybe Betsema, Vorst going to be able to bridge that gap? I remember when Van der Poel and Van Aert came into cross, both made the step to the elites just before the Tabor World Championships. Everybody was, wow, immediately world champion, only Van der Haar is near. What will this bring for the future? Are we going to be gone for many years of domination? In the end, they were, like, Van der Poel and Van Aert have dominated seasons, but still in 2016 at the World Championships in Zolder, Van der Haar came very close to a title. Nijs, Pauwels, Sweeck even featured quite some times there. When Nijs retired the season after, it was dominant, but not a class above the rest. They usually won, but the others were able to stay close. So I think it's interesting to what scenario we are going to be going in the women's side. Are Brandt, Alvarado and the rest going to be able to bridge that gap? Or is there really a new generation that has completely taken over? And will they only be left with the crumbs? Because realistically, Alvarado deserves the win in the Superprestige, but she has not been the strongest or the most consistent over the season. There were 3 riders, at least, who have been stronger, but they prioritized the World Cup. Doesn't take away anything of the win of Alvarado, because she deserved it, and today it was telling for the way she rode her season. It was just flawless. I haven't seen her make too many mistakes this season, and how other was it for Lucinda Brandt, because it was the complete opposite, especially in the first part of the race. Mistakes here, mistakes there. I think for Brandt, there's not much left for her, because the Superprestige was already gone. Focus on the X2O trophy, but even that will be difficult because Van Empel has decided to race tomorrow in Lille, but also the final round in Brussels.
I would have been fuming after that announcement that Van Empel actually is going to race the last 2 rounds of the X2O trophy if I was Brandt, but yeah, apparently that is going to happen, and that is obviously going to make it a little more difficult for Brandt to bring that general classification home, because that gap is quite significant, and normally Van Empel is not someone that is going to be losing out a lot of time compared to Brandt. And so yeah, I think that it is also a bit unfortunate, because normally if Brandt didn't have the issues that she had during the season, it would have played out maybe a little bit different, and she would have looked a little bit better in the classifications, I think. And because of how unfortunate she was, it didn't really play out that way. So I think that for her, that she's definitely happy probably with how the form is right now. The mistakes today were definitely costing her quite a lot, but I think that overall she can be happy with the result today, and just try to make the best out of it in the X2O trophy the last 2 races, and see what she can do there.
I mean, it's of course the good right of Van Empel to race the rest of the X2O series. I think she is not only going to take some serious prize money, I think 30,000 for that win, but also just in general, I think she will be getting some big start money because the races, they want a world champion, they want at least a big name, and I think realistically, with Van Aert and Van der Poel not there, the rainbow jersey of Van Empel is going to gain more publicity than signing a rider like Iserbyt or Van der Haar, who will be coming regardless of your start money. So Van Empel is definitely going to be getting some big buck. I expect the X2O trophy to be paying for flights back and forth from her holiday, because she flew to Morocco on Wednesday to Marrakesh, going on a holiday there. That was supposed to be, I think, a 1.5 week holiday, so I assume she's being flown back and forth as well. I can't really blame anybody for the decisions to do that. And I mean, Brandt, of course, I understand she will be a bit upset in the sense of, I thought I was going to be having a clean shot here, and that doesn't happen. But again, Van Empel didn't do any ride today. I think she's being flown back today. It's not going to be an ideal preparation. Next week, also no training. I'm interested. I want to see how that goes. Like, Van Empel might just come with some holiday legs trying to collect some money and not be too bothered. If you go hard right from the start, I don't rule out taking time on Van Empel, but it will need to be better than today though, and at the end, I think Brandt also knew that, and again, we come back to the end of school reference. It's not that Brandt really has anything to gain anymore with her palmarès here or there. Like, she already saved her season or made it a somewhat success with that third place at Worlds, and now it's really just the final stretch. Her attention is already at Paris-Roubaix on the road, which will be a very good race for her. Then onto the battle for third. We already basically said it in the summary. Issam Vorst did quite some work and eventually took that third place. I don't think Van der Heijden really gifted it to her. She was the strongest, and that work to keep Betsema behind, I don't really know what to think about that, because Betsema was pretty far behind the entire race, and the gap in the overall was also steady before the race. So I think Van der Heijden just didn't have what it took to even come close to beating Vorst.
Yeah, but these kind of gestures are always great, especially like you said for Van der Heijden, that probably today, was not going to be able to bring a battle for third with Vorst. That was, in my opinion, also quite clear. But if you're able to just have that some sort of a gesture in that works, and that makes sure that the bond as a teammate is getting better and better, and it helps improves overall. And I think that if you are actually ending up in a situation where you need each other, you can basically use that what you have done now in a race that doesn't really matter. You might be able to then get that back somewhere else where it's a little bit more necessary. So I think it was a kind of a good move for Van der Heijden in a way, despite the fact that she wouldn't probably be able to beat Vorst for third. And I think overall Vorst definitely was a good race from her, and that third place is definitely deserved after the season that she had.
If we look at the entire top 10, we see some names that we haven't really seen in the top 10 for a while. Alvarado with the win ahead of Brandt, Vorst and Van der Heijden. Very strong comeback by Verdonschot from a bad start, ending 5th. Shame for her that the World Championships were a disappointment with illness before, which also caused her to miss the Belgian Championships. Says that horribly affected her form peak towards Worlds, and she wasn't in form, and now finally has the form. Betsema continues what truly is a disappointing season with 6th place. Let's hope she can turn things around this summer. Ribeirol in 7th, ahead of Anna Kay. Then Baroni, nice to see her in 9th. And then Rebecca Garibaldi ends 10th. I would like to mention Manon Bakker, not necessarily to roast her or anything, but I don't think I mentioned it in last week's podcast about Worlds, or maybe I did and forgot, but she only got called up at 10:30 the night before the race by the national coach. Yeah, you're racing Worlds tomorrow because Aniek van Alphen, well, she was unfortunately affected with COVID, but that was not a great preparation, and I think it's always interesting to see the effects of like preparation. You know that you need to have a good preparation for a race. It's no rocket science or anything, but still, you could see that such a short notice had an effect. I don't think it had an effect on today's race, but nevertheless, I thought it was still worth mentioning because many stories of the worlds, well, they came at the bottom of the pile because there was so much to talk about there. But anyway, Manon Bakker, still a couple of races to go. Season is drawing to an end for everyone. Interesting to see who races what, but yeah. I think we've had everyone in the top 10, unless you still want to mention somebody, Issam.
No, I think we have gone through them all already during the season. I think Laura Verdonschot, strong result from her to finish in the top 5. And other than that, I think, yeah, it felt a little bit on the place at the end of the season. It's all, for some riders, it's becoming a bit too much. And for the others, it's still a very nice race and a very good result. But I think overall, no big surprises in the top 10 and also outside of the top 10.
Well then, Issam, that was it. The Superprestige is over. That was Middelkerke. Thank you for being here to discuss the racing with me.
Yes, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We will be back tomorrow with a podcast about the penultimate round of the X2O Trophy in Lille. After that, there is just one full cross podcast left, and that will be combining Sint-Niklaas and Brussels next week, as Oostmalle is not being shown on public television, only a regional television. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you guys soon. Goodbye.